When Home Alone premiered in 1990, no one involved could have predicted what it would become. What began as a modest holiday comedy quickly transformed into a cultural ritual, replayed endlessly every December, embedded into childhood memories across generations. The film's success was staggering, not just financially but emotionally. It captured something rare, the fantasy of independence wrapped in warmth, danger softened by humor, fear neutralized by love. Audiences laughed, quoted lines, and embraced the chaos, never stopping to wonder what lingered beneath the surface. Yet behind the twinkling lights and slapstick traps, Home Alone was carried by people whose lives were anything but simple. The adults in the film grounded the fantasy. They brought weight, exhaustion, loneliness, and unspoken regret into a story marketed as light entertainment. Their performances worked because they were not pretending. They were drawing from lives already shaped by struggle, disappointment, and survival in an industry that discards people without sentiment. Time has a way of reshaping how stories feel. What once played as pure comedy now carries an undertone of melancholy. Faces that once felt comforting now feel fragile. Lines that earned laughter now echo differently. With distance, Home Alone becomes less about a clever child and more about adults on the edge, parents losing control, lonely men misjudged by the world, tired souls offering kindness without knowing how little time they had left. Fame did not shield these actors from decline. Success did not grant stability. Some reached their final peak in this film without realizing it. Others continued working while quietly unraveling. Their lives after Home Alone moved in directions far removed from holiday cheer. Illness, controversy, industry neglect, and sudden death followed paths that no script could soften. This is not a story about box office numbers or awards. It is a story about what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. What became of the people who helped define one of the most beloved films in history? How did success change them or fail to save them? And why does revisiting their performances now feel heavier than ever before? Home Alone remains immortal. Its cast was not. And within that contrast lies the real story, one that deserves to be told slowly, honestly, and without nostalgia blinding the truth. John Candy. By the time John Candy appeared in Home Alone, he was already carrying the weight of an entire era of comedy on his shoulders. Born in 1950 in Newmarket, Ontario, Candy rose from Canadian sketch comedy into Hollywood stardom by embodying something audiences instinctively trusted. He was funny without cruelty, loud without arrogance, and emotional without manipulation. That rare balance made him beloved, but it also trapped him. Hollywood expected him to be endlessly warm, endlessly available, endlessly funny, no matter the cost. Candy was 40 years old when he played Gus Polinski, the polka band leader who helps a desperate mother get home. The role was small, almost invisible on paper. In reality, it became one of the film's emotional turning points. Candy reportedly filmed all of his scenes in a single day, improvising much of his dialogue and accepted minimal pay as a favor. What the audience saw as effortless charm was, in truth, the product of decades of discipline and exhaustion. He gave generosity to a role that asked little from him, because that was who he was. After Home Alone, Candy kept working, but something had shifted. His performances grew gentler, more reflective, as if comedy alone was no longer enough. Behind the scenes, his health was deteriorating rapidly. Years of overwork, long shooting schedules, weight struggles, and constant pressure to perform were taking their toll. Friends later recalled that he often spoke about slowing down, about wanting more time with family, about stepping away. Yet the industry kept calling, and Candy kept answering. In 1994, while filming in Mexico, John Candy died suddenly of a heart attack at just 43 years old. The shock rippled through Hollywood and far beyond it. There were no major scandals attached to his name, no dramatic public collapse, only a quiet realization that kindness does not protect a person from burnout. Watching Home Alone now, his scenes feel painfully ironic. He plays a man helping someone else get home, offering comfort without hesitation, unaware that his own journey was nearing its end. Candy's legacy is not defined by tragedy, but by warmth that survived it. His final years remind us that laughter can be a form of labor, and that even the most comforting figures often carry the heaviest burdens. Robert's Blossom. When Robert's Blossom appeared as Old Man Marley in Home Alone, he carried an aura that instantly unsettled audiences. Silent, hunched, and misunderstood, his character existed on the margins of the story, much like Blossom himself existed on the margins of Hollywood. Born in 1924, he came from a world far removed from studio fame. He was trained in theater, wrote poetry, and valued discipline over visibility. Acting for him was not about recognition. It was about presence. At 66 years old, Blossom was cast at an age when most actors are quietly dismissed as no longer useful to mainstream cinema. His face told stories without dialogue. Deep lines, heavy eyes, and deliberate movement created a sense of history that could not be faked. In Home Alone, his character is initially framed as a monster, a whispered legend among children. Yet the truth revealed later is devastatingly human. He is simply a lonely man, estranged from his family, watching life pass by from the shadows. That emotional turn, particularly the church scene, became one of the film's most enduring moments. Blossom delivered it with restraint, avoiding sentimentality. There were no grand speeches, no tears engineered for sympathy. Just a quiet confession and a fragile smile. It was acting rooted in life experience rather than technique. Despite the impact of the role, Home Alone did not revive Blossom's career in any meaningful way. Hollywood did not suddenly embrace him. He returned to smaller roles, television appearances, and stage work, largely ignored by an industry obsessed with youth. There were no scandals attached to his name, no public breakdowns, only the slow erasure that many aging actors endure. He accepted it without bitterness, continuing to write and perform on his own terms. Robert's Blossom died in 2011 at the age of 87 from natural causes. His death passed quietly, much like his life outside the screen. Looking back, his character in Home Alone feels prophetic. A man judged by rumors, feared because of silence, ultimately redeemed through simple connection. Blossom did not chase legacy, yet he left one behind. In a film full of noise and chaos, he embodied stillness, and that may be why his presence lingers long after the laughter fades. John Hurd. When John Hurd stepped into the role of Peter McAllister, he brought an edge that subtly shifted the tone of Home Alone. Unlike the exaggerated chaos around him, Hurd played the father as tightly wound, impatient, and visibly overwhelmed. It was not an accident. Born in 1946 into a privileged but emotionally rigid family, Hurd grew up under intense expectations. Discipline mattered. Vulnerability did not. That upbringing shaped both his personality and the kinds of roles he gravitated toward. He was 44 years old when Home Alone was released, already known for serious dramatic work rather than light comedy. His career before the film was defined by intensity and internal conflict, and even in a family movie, that tension seeped through. Peter McAllister is not cruel, but he is distant, distracted, and constantly on the verge of losing control. Many viewers did not notice it at the time, but his performance anchors the film in realism. He feels like a man carrying pressures he does not know how to release. After the massive success of Home Alone, Hurd continued working steadily, but the industry struggled to redefine him. He became typecast as authority figures, stern fathers, and troubled men. Leading roles faded. Supporting parts became the norm. Off-screen, his life began to unravel in ways that mirrored the frustration visible in his performances. His personal relationships were marked by volatility, legal troubles, and accusations of domestic abuse that severely damaged his reputation. These controversies followed him for years, often eclipsing his talent. As his career cooled, the distance between who he was and how he was perceived grew wider. Heard never fully escaped the shadow of his personal life. Work continued, but recognition did not. In 2017, he was found dead in a hotel room at the age of 71. The cause was later determined to be a heart attack, complicated by medication. His passing received little attention, a quiet ending for an actor once seen by millions. Rewatching Home Alone now, Heard's performance feels uncomfortably honest. He plays a man trying to hold a family together while everything slips beyond his control. It was not a stretch. It was a reflection. His story reminds us that visibility does not equal understanding, and that some struggles remain hidden even in the brightest spotlight. Billy Bird. When Billy Bird appeared briefly in Home Alone, most audiences barely registered her name, yet her presence added texture to the world of the film. Born in 1908, Billy Bird belonged to a generation of performers whose careers were built long before fame meant visibility or branding. She grew up in vaudeville radio and early television, learning to survive in entertainment when stability was rare and recognition fleeting. Acting was not a path to celebrity for her. It was simply work. By the time Home Alone was released, Billy Bird was already in her early 80s. Her role as the blunt, unamused airline ticket agent reflected decades of lived experience. There was no exaggeration in her performance, no forced comedy, just dry realism delivered with perfect timing. She represented the kind of working-class authority that audiences instinctively recognized, someone who had seen too much chaos to be impressed by panic or excuses. Unlike younger cast members, Home Alone was never a career milestone for Bird. It was one of many small appearances late in a life spent moving from role to role without ever being embraced as a star. Hollywood rarely celebrated actresses of her age. Opportunities narrowed, parts became smaller. Her contribution was often invisible, yet essential. She gave credibility to scenes that could have felt cartoonish without her grounded presence. After Home Alone, Bird continued to work sporadically, appearing in minor television roles until her health declined. There were no public scandals, no dramatic headlines, no late-life resurgence. Her story was defined by endurance rather than transformation. She lived quietly, far from the spotlight, carrying memories of an industry that had changed beyond recognition. Billy Bird died in 2002 at the age of 94. Her passing went largely unnoticed by the public, a fate shared by many character actors whose faces are remembered long after their names fade. Watching Home Alone today, her brief appearance feels symbolic. She represents the invisible backbone of Hollywood, performers who supported iconic films without ever benefiting from their success. Her life reminds us that not every legacy is loud. Some exist only in moments, but those moments endure. Looking back, Home Alone feels less like a harmless holiday fantasy and more like a time capsule filled with unfinished lives. What once played as pure laughter now carries an unexpected gravity. The traps, the jokes, the triumphs of childhood imagination remain intact, but the faces surrounding them tell a different story with age. These were not just supporting characters in a family comedy. They were people standing at very different points of their own journeys, some near the end without knowing it, others already fading from a system that no longer had space for them. John Candy brought warmth so natural it felt effortless. Yet behind it was a man burning himself out to meet expectations that never slowed. Robert's Blossom gave the film its soul, embodying loneliness and redemption with the quiet dignity of someone who understood both intimately. John Hurd anchored the chaos with tension and realism, while privately losing control of his own life. Billy Bird appeared for mere moments, representing generations of performers who built Hollywood brick by brick and were quietly forgotten when the spotlight moved on. None of them benefited equally from the film's immortality. The movie lived forever. They did not. That imbalance is what makes revisiting Home Alone unsettling in ways audiences never anticipated. The film froze them at a moment of visibility, while time continued its work elsewhere. Illness, controversy, industry neglect, and sudden death followed, erasing futures that once seemed secure. Home Alone is still marketed as comfort viewing, yet its legacy now feels bittersweet. It reminds us that success does not pause time, and that even films built on joy often rest on lives marked by struggle. These actors gave pieces of themselves to a story that outlived them, and in doing so, left behind something more powerful than nostalgia. They left truth. Truth about aging, about invisibility, about kindness offered without reward. Their performances still return every winter, unchanged, while the world around them has moved on. Perhaps that is why the film endures. Not because it promises safety, but because it quietly acknowledges loss. In the end, Home Alone is not just about a child surviving by himself. It is about people passing through one another's lives briefly, leaving traces behind, and disappearing long before the audience is ready to let them go.